Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard, learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome. Today, I'm speaking with Annie Heathcote, a multi-business owner, social media influencer, author, Christian, and lifelong disability advocate, whose life and work embodied the belief that disability doesn't mean inability. Diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder at 13 months and in a wheelchair by age 2, she's dedicated her life to breaking barriers, championing accessibility, and inspiring others with her message of resilience and faith. Annie was crowned Miss Wheelchair Wisconsin in 2023, using her platform Caring is Caregiving to reach more than 100,000 people in 52 events that year, speaking at schools, conferences, organizations, and across media outlets statewide. Her advocacy took her to the Miss Wheelchair America National Competition, where she placed in the top 5, earning second runner-up and the Best Speech Award. She has since been recognized as Woman of the Year for Dane County for her leadership and community impact. Beyond advocacy, Annie is the founder of Annie Designs and Annie Speaks LLC, where she works as a freelance web and graphic designer and transformational speaker. Welcome, Annie. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. You and I have been following each other for a little while on social media, and
Mhm.
I think it's just amazing how when the internet is used for good, right? It can connect people all over the world. This podcast now goes all over the world, and I think that God is pretty gracious with us when we try to use what we have and we try to overflow what we've learned about him in our lives to help others. And I see you doing that all of the time. What we do here is just a little different than most podcasts. We start in the beginning, we go all the way back to your childhood and make our way up to what you're doing now. And the reason that I do that is we have a lot of different types of listeners. Some have believed in God their whole life, some are new believers, and some are still seeking. Some don't even know that they're seeking quite yet, but they like our stories and they listen. And what I have heard by starting in childhood and moving up until the present is that listeners are able to see, wait a minute, each one of these stories is so unique, but I've noticed that God is always the same. And so it's opened up a doorway to have conversations with people about the goodness of who God is. And I think every one of our stories can show people that God is good. Maybe your circumstances aren't, maybe they're not what you asked for or wanted, but God shows up and he is with them in us. And that is the thing that our story can carry all over the world. I always say that the way we go into the world is by sharing our stories. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to hear more about yours. So, Annie, will you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, so growing up, I come from a family of 5 kids. I'm number 4 of 5, and we had a good childhood, growing up together. And my siblings just treated me like anyone else, and I grew up in a small town too, so those tight-knit communities are really nice, and everyone knows everyone and is supportive. Um, a few like childhood memories is like when I was little. I know I didn't get a power wheelchair till I was 2 years old, and most kids start walking when they're 1. And I never walked or crawled because I have a condition called spinal muscular atrophy, and it basically makes my muscles really weak and tighten up over time. So growing up, I remember a lot of doctor appointments and physical therapy and just like just a bunch of like being in the hospital a lot, especially with having like 37 surgeries throughout my entire lifetime. I can't believe it's that high. Like it's been a
Wow.
lot. And to have my siblings and family there, it's been nice. And um when I was little, I didn't have a wheelchair, so I my siblings actually would push me around in a cardboard box. They would like put pillows and blankets around, and or they would just carry me everywhere because I was so little. But they really like
Yeah.
included me in like everything that they were doing outside. They would just like have me there and put toys around me. And eventually when I got my chair, it was a whole another sense of freedom, but it was really weird for me because I, wasn't walking. And I remember my parents telling me a story where I asked them like, Mom and Dad, like, when is it my turn to walk? Because I would see my siblings walk and other
Oh,
kids, and I was just
yeah.
like, oh, well, it's just not my time yet. Like, I guess I'm just not old enough or something, you just don't understand
Yeah.
those things as a kid. And they looked at me and they said, when you see Jesus, that's when you'll be able to
Oh.
walk. And
Wow, that's can we
uh,
just put a pin right there?
yeah.
That's a really, really powerful answer for a really difficult question. And I applaud your parents for giving you that answer, but I'm sure it probably didn't help much at the time,
Mhm.
but it's a beautiful answer, really.
Yeah.
Um, when you think about it. And you had told me during our pre-recording call that, and this is the part that I love about looking back, right? God peppers in experiences and people and things to help us in areas where perhaps things are difficult. And you told me that across the street, two kids had the exact same thing that you have. I mean, that doesn't that seem odd?
Mhm. Oh yeah. I
You
mean, it
know?
was a total God thing. I write about that in my book. And
Yeah.
basically, so I my parents got a call from the doctor, and basically the doctor said, your child's not going to make it past the age of 2, let alone adolescence. Like, go home and love her. And my parents just chose to really fight for me. And
Hmm.
um, uh, God put this family across the street, and unfortunately, one of the children passed away as a baby, and the other one has type 1 because there's 4 types of SMA, and I have type 2. And so he's a little bit weaker than me, but he's living life to the fullest. And so it was actually his
Mm.
grandparents that live that are our neighbors, and
Hmm.
they knew what we were going through, and they're like, "Oh, SMA, we know that. Go see these
Yeah.
doctors at one of the most prestigious hospitals for SMA, which was UW-Madison,
Hmm.
which I live about." So our neighbors across the street actually had experience with SMA, and they're like, "Oh, we know what that is. You should go see these doctors at UW," which ended up being one of the most prestigious hospitals for SMA. They had lots of specialists that knew how to treat that disease, and we saw a really good doctor there, and it just was cool how God lined all that up. Because people would travel hours to get to that hospital, and I'm only 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
he's
was a
so
little better.
good. He doesn't miss a detail, and I do think it's when we look back with intention and with him that we can see a lot of the things that maybe we don't notice at the time. Maybe you did in that particular case, but a lot of times we miss things, and I do think it's so important to be looking for the good. I wanted to ask you, because your siblings and your parents, really were invested and intentional in the way that they treated you, because you had these other kids and doctors and information because of them having the same thing. Like, when was it that you finally realized that you were living with a disability or that you were differently abled?
Yeah, I knew I couldn't do things, and so I'd always just adapt. And I was a happy kid, so I just, lived life to the fullest. And
Hmm.
I wasn't really worried about the negative things or didn't focus on that. And it wasn't until I got into public school, especially even just, I remember this memory from kindergarten, all the kids just looking at me like I was so different. And
Mm,
it was just really, I was like, nothing's wrong with me, I'm Andy. And then you just kind of realize that that's just
yeah,
not normal, but it was my
yeah,
normal, so it didn't seem different to me until everyone else told me it was.
yeah. I also remember you saying, about the wheelchair being so big. They didn't really make them for children at the time.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to maneuver, or are there any
Oh, that's
memories?
yeah. So it's interesting too because when I got my chair, I hardly wanted to move it. I was so scared. Like I'd go really slow, and I wouldn't move much. And then like, come on, Annie, like come on, like kind of as you like cheer a child to like stand up and take a few steps toward you. Like that's what it kind of felt like, but in a
Mm-hmm.
wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, my other chairs my parents would take me to the mall and I'd see how fast I could go. So it definitely switched. Once I
Yeah.
got more comfortable, I realized, wow, I can get everywhere and I don't have to ask for help and like depend on people. And it opened up so much freedom in my life. And then I would go to the malls and like dodge people in places, they're like, slow
Yeah.
down.
That's awesome. I love that you use the word freedom because I would imagine that it's really difficult not being able to get yourself anywhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because a lot of people think of a person in a wheelchair and they would even say, "Oh, you're wheelchair bound," but the
Mm.
correct term would be, "You're a wheelchair user or a person in a wheelchair," because
Hmm.
our wheelchair gives us freedom. It doesn't make us bound. It actually allows us to have a lot of mobility.
Exactly. And I love the memory that you shared because that just exactly paints the picture of that freedom, right?
Mm,
Yeah, it's really important if you're listening to listen closely to that. If you do encounter people who are differently abled, I think a lot of people in the world really don't they don't understand and they don't know how to speak about things just because it hasn't been their experience. And there are some people who are very open to wanting to know more um and to not put any kind of negative spin on anything. And then there are other people who just kind of go by whatever they've grown up with. So I think it's always important to talk about these types of things. Now, you told me that eventually the kids at school and the teachers were really supportive and they helped you. And once the kids got used to you, um, what did you really like to do in school? Did you have a favorite subject?
yeah, I really enjoyed art, and even though I don't have a lot of muscle strength and I can't move that well.
Hmm.
I have really fine motor skills. And so like drawing, coloring, molding clay, painting, it was an expression for me that I could use my imagination and
Mm.
create something new. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I love the fact that that was something that was an expression for you. One of my favorite things, I'm a creative person, and one of my favorite things about being creative is that we're made in the image of God and He was creator. We're all creators, but I do believe that there were some people empowered, especially to create. When you look back in the Bible, the very first person that we see in the Old Testament being filled with the Holy Spirit was craftsmen. For making the temple,
Mhm.
which I
Yeah.
think is pretty cool that, God, that's a gift that you got. And having the fine motor skills and being able to express yourself must have made such a difference.
And that really correlated to a lot of like nail art. I saw a design back when I was in seventh grade just on the internet and I was like, oh, I can do that. Like I just was like figured everything out and started doing nail art and now I've done over 100 designs over my lifetime, different holidays, different occasions, really detailed and complex designs. And I have small nails and it'd be fun when I go out and about because people would notice my nails and it'd be kind of a natural conversation starter that would
Hmm.
overcome kind of the awkwardness of the wheelchair and help me like break out of my comfort zone and talk to people more. And they'd
Mm,
ask me about my nails and they're like, oh, like who did those for you? And it was kind of a nice thing to say, I did. Like God
yeah,
gave me the ability to do this. And they're like, wow, like it was always such a testimony of what God's done in my life and the
yeah.
creativity that He's given me.
Yeah, amen. And I remember, now I just turned 62. I'm a little bit older than you are, but I remember loving nail art. And it's been around for a long time. Do you remember, like, other than seeing it, like, did you ever see another person do it? You had just seen about it and thought that you would try it?
Yeah, like I saw a nail design, just a
Yeah.
picture of it, and I was like, I could just figure out how to did it,
Mm,
and I tried it, and it just was a natural gift, and I could just see something and do it, and I
yeah.
have really good visual perception, and that definitely correlated later to my career.
Yeah. And because they are intricate and they are kind of difficult if you don't know what you're doing. So it kind of reminds me of, I feel like musicians are mathematicians, like they go together. And I feel like creativity sometimes takes that part of our brain as well. There's two sides of the brain, and there's certain activities that we do that use both. And I believe that when we're being creative, and we're also doing something that uses our intellect, we're using both. And I remember doing them, and I think that that's amazing that you could just figure it all out. There's mathematics mixed in there.
Mm.
Yeah. So, in junior high, you told me that you had really good friends. You tried to get your work done, but you had 8+ hours of caregiving within the day that were being done for you. What did it feel like to have that much of your day with people taking care of you? Is that something you were just used to? Was it something that was difficult, easy? Did you feel grateful? What were your experiences?
All of the above, really, having that care, I was really thankful for the help. It was hard to always receive the help or want the help, but I also had to eat and go to the bathroom, so I kind of didn't have a choice. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of different hands on me, different people, and just a huge amount of trust on both sides to help with
Yeah.
that kind of care. So that was hard as a kid, but now I'm kind of used to it, so that's just like my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really helped me use my time more intentionally because I had 8 less hours less in a day, but I was
Mm-hmm.
still doing everything else an average kid would at my age. And I find that when people have more time, they tend to not use it as intentionally. But with less time, I was really particular how I used every second of the Lord. And I think that helped me, or of the day, and that helped me steward my time well that the Lord gave me, and was really intentional in like getting my homework done like during class and not trying to go home with no homework because I was kind of like, I go to school 7 hours a day. Why would I have homework after that? I don't get paid for any of this, I'm like, I was very business minded from a
Uh-huh.
young age, and just was intentional about things, and it helped me have a great work ethic and work hard and smarter, not harder. And but yet you
Yeah.
still have to work hard. And I didn't feel like I was like the smart kid growing up, but I could like in a sense outsmart people. Like I had really good perception of things and perspective, so I could
Mm-hmm.
see how to do things more efficiently and faster and how to get to
Mm-hmm.
a greater outcome. Like I would think about it before I would do because my energy was limited too. So I had to be really intentional about where I spent that energy, kind of like how many spoons you have in a day and where do you put that time and energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. I wrote on the side of my paper, wisdom using time intentionally. And then I said that's the only resource that we get from God that we don't know how much we have of. And you're
Mm.
right. I think so many people, especially right now with all of the screens and, being able to stream things that, I think people waste so much of their time. And I I know that God has given each one of us a ministry to do and people to reach and things to share and ways to live and work. And it's just something that many people are caught up in just wasting time and they just sit in front of their television. And when I was young, when the series it was over all summer long, and you had to wait until it came back on. We only had two kids
Mhm.
shows, and then on Saturdays there were a couple of cartoons. That TV was not a big thing. We were outside or making something. And so it sounds to me like God actually gave you a blessing in that you learned how to make the most of what you had. And I just love hearing that that is what you got out of that, that you got like an encouraging, positive thing. And then those attributes have taken you a long way and allowed you to continue to do the work that God had for you to do.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to not like compare lives is the thief of
Yeah.
comparison
Yeah.
and how the enemy uses that. And,
Yeah.
when we pass on from this world and we go before God, it's basically going to be like, what did you do with what I
Hmm.
gave you? Not what I gave someone else or whatever. Like, what did you do with what I gave you? So the Lord, I believe, He made me this way. I'm still made in God's image, even though I have a disability. And He is glorifying himself through my life. And when I am weak, he is strong. And
Hmm.
because I have so many, I guess maybe people would describe them as disadvantages or starting from a place of kind of like I describe it as like I start more in a hole and I have to dig myself out of that hole when everyone else it feels like is on ground level.
Hmm.
And it's like I'm always fighting for that place, always trying my hardest and like relying on God. And that dependency has actually made me stronger because God is
Hmm.
my strength.
Yeah. And that's where I say you have an advantage uh, over others because I think so much worldly stuff gets in the way and
Yeah.
having that reliance, having that real relationship with him when I look back over my life, it is in the most difficult times and the things that I never thought I would survive. That is where like the
Mhm.
foundation of my faith came from. And I didn't come to Christ until 25 years ago and I'm 62.
Oh,
So
wow.
do the math, right? But in these 25 years, he has untaught me so many things. He has healed me from so many things and he has showed me to rely on him before people.
Yeah,
And
praise God.
yeah. And so, like, I'm hearing that you learned how to do that from the start, which is amazing. We haven't really talked that much about your family's faith when you were growing up. So, did you go to church? Like, how did you get to the point where you knew about God?
Yeah, so my parents got saved, I think when they were married, but before they had kids. And so as kids, thankfully got to grow up in a church, in a really strong hometown church, Bible believing church,
Hmm.
preach the gospel and everything. And that is so rare. And I'm realizing how grateful I am to have that in my life and just
Hmm.
like my church family, really, like they're my family also,
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Now, you ended up, you said when you were in high school, you were doing a photo shoot and you realized that you really enjoyed graphic design. Like, what did you like about it?
Well, kind of like how the nail thing led into that. Like I see God's hand throughout my entire life and how the opportunities and experiences and the hardships and the blessings have all contributed to who I am today and where I'm at. And I'm just so thankful to see his hand in everything. And so
Hmm.
with graphic design, I really like art, technology, psychology, and marketing. Like those are my top favorite subjects to dive
Hmm.
into and learn about. And so I'm always learning and growing, and the Lord is showing me new things and communing with me in that. And
Hmm.
so with getting weaker and having a progressive disability, I need to make sure to choose a career that I could do long term. And
Yeah.
since art is digital, I can work on a computer and do that for a long time. So I did more physical art like painting and drawing, like really good acrylic and pen and ink drawings when I was young. And then that was like the basis foundation for my graphic design digital art, which actually kind of put me a little bit ahead and in that space. And I was able to do really good work in that area. And yeah, so I went to school for graphic design and illustration and web and digital media design.
Hmm.
And I got two associate degrees. I graduated in 21 and I was gonna find an agency job, like, just work at a graphic design firm. And before I knew it, the Lord had brought me 24 clients. My first year, I had to turn a bunch away because,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I could only take on so much. But it was really neat too because the Lord showed me the two things I thought, like, my faith wasn't as strong then, but still pretty strong. But like, even my disability, I was like, sometimes you look at the world and you're like, oh, I'm not supposed to have this or I'm different and it's bad. But actually, God showed me that my disability has been a strength over and over again in my life, and especially
Hmm.
for my graphic design.
Hmm.
Christianity and disability were my niches that I design in. So God brought me a bunch of clients to where they knew, like, you're a Christian, I want you to do my project, or you have a
Yeah.
disability, you know what it's like. I want you to do my project. And so
Yeah.
I was brought these clients and I was able to serve them even better because I had that life experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And what kind of projects do you do? Just anything that people send you, or do you do book covers? Do you do
I used
interiors?
to do more web design. Now I do more like social media posting and that kind of thing, like influencing and growing your brand. But I do like logos and stationery and
Mm,
kind of a whole design concept. I mean, I do basically every graphic design, digital works, like even
awesome.
user experience and user interface, like how we interact with design. So
Hmm.
I have quite a range of skill set and I like doing pretty much all of it. So yeah.
That's awesome. The reason why I ask is because a lot of people who listen, I have a lot of friends who are authors, and you never know. Someone might need
Mhm.
a little bit of graphic design.
Yeah.
So, in addition to starting your own business, which is so amazing, it's such a great thing to be able to do. You were doing this during a difficult time, right? That was during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't get to go to my graduation ceremony in college. You know, it was like I was a junior in college and it was like spring break and I just remember like all these red flashing lights on the TV and like we were told to go home and I don't know, it just didn't seem real. It seemed like something out of a movie. It was crazy. And then I just never went back. You know, classes were all online and
Yeah.
I had another basically year and a fourth left.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that was hard to not really say goodbye. But I ended up, when I graduated, even though it was virtual, I got my cap and gown, went back to the school when it was safe, like took some pictures and went out
Yeah.
with family for dinner. I tried to make something of the graduation.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely different.
Yeah, that was a interesting time for everyone. There was a point where I was podcasting during the pandemic, and that always ended up coming up in every conversation. And so many people saw it as a setback, but I saw it as a springboard, as a reset button. I felt like God gave people opportunities to do things that they hadn't done before, to slow down, to
Yes.
reconnect. And I think also he gave a lot of people the opportunity to go more places online and do more things all over the world because they couldn't physically go places. So I personally, even though it was a really difficult time for so many people, I think there were good things in it. Now, you ended up having the opportunity for competing in Miss Wheelchair Wisconsin. You weren't going to do it at first, but you did end up doing it. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and what it was like for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting how God plants these seeds in our heart, and then we kind of just wait for his timing. Because there's a friend that reached out to me when I was 20 years old, and they're like, "You should do this competition. I think you'd be really good at it." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like, tell me more about it." And then she's like, "You're 21, right?" And I was like, "No." And so it didn't work out that time because you had to be 21. And then, a few years go by, and it was about a year after I graduated college that the state coordinator, a different one, reached out and was like, "Hey, you should do this, and we really want you to compete." And I originally said no because I had a booming business. I was very busy. I,
Hmm.
I was playing a sport called power soccer at the time. I was really involved in my church and volunteering, and I had a full life and like all the caregiving stuff. That's more than a full-time job, like hiring and managing caregivers and
Hmm.
scheduling and doing the shifts. So yeah, it just didn't seem like time-wise it was the right fit, but it was the Lord's timing and he gave me the strength and made it work. And it was my first time competing. And I said, "Lord, I'm just gonna do this for your glory and whatever the outcome is, I'm okay with that." And sure enough, they're like, "The next title holder is Miss Annie Heathcote,"
That's
and I was like,
amazing.
"Yeah." So
Yeah.
the competition day was pretty intense too. Like I had to write and memorize a 2-minute speech on my platform and give that in front of the audience, and then do like private and audience judging and all that and different workshops and
Hmm.
you get all dressed up and everything too. So
That's
it's
awesome.
not based on beauty, but it's based on communication and advocacy skills and like your character and who you are. And I think that's so much more important. And I'm really glad that they looked at your heart instead of what you look like on the outside and how you serve others and how you love others.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's what every one of those types of competitions should be about. And I don't even understand competitions other than, that you get these opportunities if you win to reach more people. And that part about it is really great. You get a chance to be an advocate and to connect with others in a way because you have the title. You had told me that what you spoke about was really important. What was your platform?
So my platform was caring is caregiving.
Hmm.
And basically, there's two sides of it. So, one side is advocating for people to become caregivers and kind of sharing what that's like and encourage them to help others that need that personal care so that they can live an independent life and learn how to
Hmm.
like serve others too. And then the other side of it is I teach people with disabilities on how to hire, manage, and train their caregivers so that they can make sure
Mm.
that they're a good boss and that they're able to find the care that they need. And so
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that. I ended up teaching a workshop in Washington, D.C. at the Dana and Christopher Reeve Summit. And that's where I
Hmm.
taught that breakout session to people with disabilities. And, just to see their smile on their faces and to give them that hope of like, you can do it. And God's going to be there with you in it. And He'll provide the care you need. And here are the skills to do so. Like, He gives
Yeah.
us those gifts and skills and resources for a reason,
Yeah.
like
That's
faith and
wonderful.
action. Yeah.
Yeah. And as someone who's been, I worked with the elderly for about 20 years and did a lot of hospice work, and then have the past 6 years been caregiving for my parents. My mom passed away 2 years ago. Dad will be 96 in August. And so someone who's spent a lot of their time caregiving, I understand that it is important that the person who's being cared for knows how to say, these are the things that I need. These are the things that I need you to do it this way, and this is why. Or
Right.
I don't care for the way that you're doing that because I need this. It's important because
Uh-huh.
there are times where I'm trying to get my dad to explain to me his level of pain if something happens, right? And he has absolutely no idea how to give me, or exactly, well, when does it hurt and what were you doing? And, to try to ask all the questions to get to the root cause of what is it that we're treating. And I've been fortunate he's done really well. My mom used to have a lot more issues, and she had no idea. 1 minute she was a 5, the next minute she was a 15. And it's just so difficult. But he really has trouble articulating what's happening. And I think it's important that if you're a caregiver, you really need to understand the experience of the person you're caring for.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you told me that when you had won, they had 52 events by the end of that year for you. You ended up competing after that for Miss Wheelchair America, and you had won third in the nation, which is amazing. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. And you again were awarded for uh, your best speech, this time by the audience.
Hmm.
What was in your speech? Was it basically the same platform, or was there other things?
Yeah, I honestly changed one word. Time kind of got away from me. I was like, well, this is a good speech. I'll just do it again. And then I practiced, of course.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but yeah, I just changed like from instead of Miss Wheelchair Wisconsin, I said Miss Wheelchair America. So,
Well, there you go. You
but
don't
yeah,
don't don't fix
yeah.
what isn't broken, right?
And like I'm a public speaker, and so I learned those skills too throughout that competition. And
Hmm.
I grew up in the charity space too with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I was their state and goodwill ambassador. So I like kind of grew up as a poster child, like doing TV and interviews and stuff like that. And then like the Lord used that experience to help me with
Yeah.
other experience and with the speech and stuff, just learning how to like, start good and build the tension and then have like
Hmm.
a great ending, stuff like that, that really keeps the
Hmm.
audience's attention, all those like nuanced things.
Yeah, God doesn't waste anything. It's funny because, as I said, I didn't come to Christ until later in life. And so I went to a prep school for high school, and I went to NYU for college, and I was a dramatic writing major, which was a very, very small group of people that were accepted within this major, but in this really large school. And so I was learning how to write plays and screenplays, but I had to minor in voice, film, and speech. And, I said to my parents at the time, I don't even have anything valuable to write about. Now I do because I know Jesus. But at the time, I knew I really didn't. But they sent me anyway, and they said, well, when you do, you'll have all of the skills. And it's just amazing to me to see, like, I had never even listened to a podcast before I started doing this 5.5 years ago. And I use every single one of those things in podcasting. It's the best thing I never knew I wanted to do. I absolutely love it. So, God really does use everything that happens, and he begins to teach us and prepare us way before he says go.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So you ended up traveling across the US as a paid speaker. And a year ago, you wrote the book, Still We Rise. And can you tell us about your book? And we are going to do a giveaway as we often do. So whatever week this airs, those of you who listen know, but if you're new, welcome. Go over to my Instagram at @a_cup_of_gratitude, and that's where we'll be doing the giveaway for the book. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so last year I had no idea I was gonna write a book, but I knew I did eventually want to come out with like an autobiography of my life, and the Lord did that in a way I never expected. And so this project manager reached out to me and asked if I would be a part of this collaboration book with 9 other people with disabilities. And the book's called Still We Rise: Stories of Triumph Over Disabilities and the Strength of
Mm-hmm.
Empowerment. And it's a really powerful book where we each share the ups and downs of our life stories, which help people gain a new perspective and a better way to live your life and understand disability in a deeper way. And basically, I shared my life story and God's hand in it in 14 pages. And it was just incredible to write it down. It was hard to shorten it to that amount, because we only had so much space per
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
But I was just so grateful to have that opportunity. And now I get to sell that book like at my speaking events. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's just really been a blessing all around.
Yeah, yeah. As somebody who's written books, I understand. Whenever I've had somebody ask me to come be, on something collaborative, either to write a chapter or to come on their blog or whatever, and they give you a word count, it's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find editing down is difficult, but certainly to tell your whole life story in just a few pages, I would imagine that'd be really difficult. It's
Mhm.
powerful though. I think collaborative work is so great because it really gives such a bigger perspective than we could ever do on our own. And I think that's great that God gave you that opportunity. Now, you and I had talked a lot about when we share our life stories, we can help other people understand, we can strengthen people, we can help them see where God was in their situations. We can be like an arrow pointing to God. Well, how, if you had to answer in a fairly short amount of time, how do you think your story gives God glory? And how do you use your life to reach others right now?
I would say every moment is an opportunity to glorify Christ. And I really try and keep that in mind because, with the caregiving stuff, it takes so much time. I struggled with it for a while because it was like, God, like I
Mm,
could be out there doing things and doing speeches and like please, like, don't waste this potential. But I
hmm
realized it wasn't a waste because the people he put in front of me, the people that, care and want to help me, like, those are opportunities of people I can impact for Christ and share the
mm,
gospel and be a Christ-like
hmm
example and to just be present with them and hear their life stories and listen to them and care and show
hmm
love in a way that maybe, they've never gotten a compliment or had someone care. Like, it's amazing how many hardships people face and the stories and some of the darkest moments that you would never expect in someone's life. But I have the honor of hearing those stories, and it's a blessing in disguise. So it gives me a different perspective in what other people go through, and it helps my day-to-day life to be grateful for what I have. And so God just, helps me help others. And I just ask that He continues to do that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of seeing everything. And I love how he changed your perspective and allowed you to see that this was his work.
Yeah, it's
And it,
important, no
yeah,
matter if we're on stages or if we're sitting in our wheelchair in our room, like it
mhm,
all makes a difference. Like every moment of every day, he gives us the opportunity. So it's like, what did you do with what I
Yeah,
gave you.
that's right. And honestly, I do believe it's going to be a question we're asked, and um, I think so many people think that ministry is something big. And
Mm,
I think real ministry, if you had to ask me, out of everything God's given me the opportunity to do, and He's given me some big things, what the hardest or most important ministry it would be the caregiving of my parents, to come back to the place where I didn't know Christ, knowing Christ, and to love people that, although they did their best, there was a lot of dysfunction, to love
mm,
them the way that I wish I would have been loved, and to serve them the best that I could in Christ-like manner. I think that's probably the hardest and more real servant-hearted ministry I've ever done.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So you and I could probably get a cup of coffee or tea and talk for another couple of hours, but
Yeah.
in light of time, I have one more question for you. I always end every episode with this question because even though we can't go back and change anything, I think the wisdom from your answer, someone listening today could apply to their life today. So if you could go back and give your younger self any advice, what would that be?
It would be um, love God, work hard, serve others, and never give up. And that's
Mm,
like my motto. And you know, a lot of that is rooted in scripture, and that's so important to live by God's truth and reflect His character and love others how He, you know, loves us.
hmm
But yeah, if what advice would I give my past self? I guess
It's a hard
mainly.
question, but that's
I
a
know
great answer.
there's like so many things. It's like, do I
Yeah,
warn them about what's to come or do I just let
yeah,
them go through it? And it's like, and I
yeah.
just think about how God knows everything that's going to happen, and He, you know, He lets us struggle at times to strengthen us and build resilience and character and hope, but
hmm
He never lets us fall. And I think that's so loving of
Yeah,
Him, how He lets us, you know, learn from our own mistakes and consequences, but yet like leads us to a greater purpose within those hardships and shows
yeah,
so many blessings within them.
yeah. He reveals his character through those times in a way that we know we can trust him.
Mhm.
And yeah, he is good. I That's a very wise answer. Thank you. And Annie, it's just been really wonderful getting a chance to talk with you today.
Yeah,
And I
you
just want to
also.
thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one thing to be thankful for. You know, if you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.